it's here to stay. One of my favorite lines from a movie is, "It's like The Sopranos. It's over. Find a new show." It's done. Move on with your life.
Why'd you want to play college hockey? All your Frozen 4 love with guests Jess Myers and Bruce Ciskie. Plus, Bill Guerin is set to help run Team USA in the 2022 Olympics, and U.S.-born Matt Boldy signs with the Minnesota Wild. Naturally, all of that and more presented by SotaStick, brought to you by BettorEdge. This is episode 67.
Bardown Beauties jerseys are back, as are a number of other amazing designs found exclusively at SotaStick.com. Newly released 1980 scoreboard t-shirts and restocked North Star State logos. Toss down that Bardown Beauties code at checkout for free shipping on all items at SotaStick.com. Hello, everybody. We're back, episode 67, presented by SotaStick, brought to you by BettorEdge, BETTOR edge.com. What's going on, guys? Before we start into this, and I know I didn't run this by you, but I did that on purpose because I have an announcement I would really like to make. It's a very important announcement.
Oh, boy.
And I'm going to include this is what Bardown Beauties is. Bardown Beauties is now officially a bigger fan group for Cam Talbot than Marcus Foligno, and I'm sorry, and I make no apologies.
Don't you dare! Don't make me get
That's
up.
why I didn't tell you about it.
Why are you starting the episode like that?
I quit. Oh, I cannot believe the audacity.
Man.
But
You would just bring that on me. Oh my God.
Cam Talbot, ladies and gentlemen, I already apologized. I apologized to him 2 weeks ago because I thought he started playing really well then, and I understand the affinity and love for Capo Kakkonen. However, Cam Talbot, ladies and gentlemen,
when Marcus Foligno is injured too, you really are going to change the fan club association. When
I said we could have both. We're just going to make Cam Talbot. Cam's the number one, like he's the number one starter in goal, and Marcus is our number two.
Does anyone want to be on a podcast? Because I think there might be a job opening soon. No, it's fair to appreciate Cam Talbot, and I put out, we put one out on Bardown Beauties. I put one out on my personal Twitter, an appreciation post. He played incredible in the first game against Vegas. He's played, he's done a lot of good things, and I even said, way at the beginning of the season when he wasn't necessarily getting the wins and it was Kakkonen getting them, I'm like, Talbot's playing well. He wasn't getting the help on those nights offensively. Sometimes they were just great goals that not many goalies are going to stop. And so I was really happy to see him get a solid win against, he won the Wild that first game 100%. Against Vegas. 100% won them that game. And Vegas put a lot of great scoring opportunities on net. You go to the
with
shootout,
the few skaters that they had.
Oh yeah, they've got some cap issues, but Cam Talbot came up big many times in that game, especially late when it was tied, and the Wild had to, the Wild didn't have a lead in that game, so Cam Talbot had to keep them in it when they would go down a goal and then another goal, and the Wild battled back both times, were able to get it tied and send it to a shootout win just the night before. Kakkonen had lost it in the shootout. So it was awesome to see Cam
much less of a team. Right? And again, that's not, I'm not at all blasting Capo Kakkonen. I think I will continue to say it's a fantastic tandem that the Minnesota Wild have, but I think Cam still isn't maybe getting some of the love that he deserves because he has, when he came back from COVID, and I know we talked about it a little bit last week, it's just, he's playing awesome. And I think that was the big question of him coming in. I know that was the question I had, is he had wanted to look at this to show that he wasn't just a one-off success again in Calgary. And he wanted to prove that was a level that he could still compete at. And I was kind of like, that's easy to say. Right. And then again, he was injured and he always kind of played mediocre, and there were little bits of Devin Dubnyk here and there. But I take it back. I mean, I think he's really carried over that success from Calgary. And I think he's finally found his groove, and I love it. And I see him becoming that real starter that Bill Guerin had said at the beginning of the season. He is our number one, and that's stayed true to form. And I'm okay riding his hand. Let's go for it. So Cam Talbot, let's go.
I will say this too. Cam Talbot, they've talked about it on the broadcast a lot. People have tweeted about it a lot. He has such a calm demeanor. Kakkonen as well, which is very different from the goalie tandem we've had in recent years. Al Stalock and Devin Dubnyk, very emotional players, right? Which is very good. That's a good quality to have as well. It's not necessarily worse or better than being a calm netminder, but they provide two different aspects to the way a goalie plays. And
such a good point. Yeah.
And it's sometimes you want that calm demeanor more, just like sometimes you want that emotional demeanor, but we're seeing a very different style of a tandem that we've seen in recent years. And I think Wild fans are appreciating that calmness because they're so used to more of a chaotic play and chaotic emotions from Wild netminders. So he he makes the big saves. He gets up and he gets ready to make another one. And he doesn't really get involved in much. He's kind of
back-to-back in Vegas, right? Just 2 unreal
that
saves.
Should have both been goals. 100% should have been in the back of the net, and he made the save. So yes, we got to give him credit. Love to see him playing well. And to your point, Jesse, this is who Guerin and Dean Evason wanted as their starting netminder. So you need him to play like a starting netminder, and he has been doing that.
You know, you mentioned obviously shootouts. The win against Vegas came in a shootout. We saw the Minnesota Wild's first shootout in a 8-round game against San Jose.
As if that game wasn't already going late enough. I'm like, Jesus.
Really fun for me to cover and go to bed too at 2 a.m. No, but I mean, Alexis, how do you think they're faring? I know you have your own. Let's start with your take on shootouts.
This was my one contribution to segment 1. Like Jesse had a couple bullet points, and I wrote shootouts. I'm like, I was like, oh, about this.
Shit, she wants to open this can of worms. Let's go. All right.
Well, it's the perfect time to, because as you mentioned, we've seen the Wild's first 2 shootouts this season, and I have never been a fan of the shootout. I don't care if the Wild win. I don't care if the Wild lose. I don't care if someone makes a sick move. I don't care if someone misses the net. I do not like the shootout. And everyone's response to this is, what, you just want to go back to a tie? Maybe I do. I'm sick of the shootout. I hate it. And, you know,
Julie the cat. Ties are like kissing your brother.
Thank you. It is. But you know what? It's better than a shootout. And the thing is I was talking to someone about this the other day. 3-on-3 overtime is so exciting to watch. No matter who you're rooting for, you know, it's just such a fun way to do overtime compared to the 5-on-5 in the regular season that we used to have. So you get this exciting 3-on-3 overtime for 5 minutes, and if nobody wins, you end it in this lame ass shootout. Like, are you kidding me? You just had 5 minutes of pure excitement, and now you're just gonna have people go 1v1 until somebody scores more goals than the other team. What I would like to see is a 10-minute overtime. I guarantee you, if you double the length of the overtime, you're not overdoing it. You're not saying, hey, we're going to do 1 million overtimes, or just do 2 5-minute overtimes and have a quick break in between. Something, because I guarantee you 3-on-3 has had more games end in overtime than when they did the 5-on-5. And I think if you just extend overtime a little bit more, I bet you have even less games go to the shootout. Hockey is such a team sport, and shootouts take away that team aspect. And that makes me, I don't like that. And so whether the Wild win or lose, I'm glad they won and lost a shootout this week, because then nobody can be mad at me like, oh, you're mad because the Wild lost. No, I'm mad because I hate shootouts. There's my rant. Yeah. Jesse, what do you think?
You know what? That's fair. I'm such a fan. And as we witnessed in UMD's 5 overtime game. We'll talk with Jess Myers and Bruce Ciskie in our guest segment here coming up more about that. But I mean, people love it, right? It is fun. You watch and you feel bad for these guys, but you also you can't turn away. Like they're tired, they're exhausted out there.
But that's what makes it so great.
It is. It's so great. However, then that being said, as a writer on Deadline, shootouts are much better. It's quicker. It's easier for me to follow. I don't have to do that. So selfishly, I enjoy that. But I like the idea of extending it, because I would like to have more overtime, or even do the 2 5-minute periods. Because I think a shootout is kind of just like okay, hey, let's just get this over. Yep. But to be taken into consideration too, especially this season, with how quickly some of these guys have to play, putting them on the ice for 4 or 5 overtime, even 3 overtimes, like, that is going to wear and tear, and you probably don't want to risk your players getting injured, right, in an overtime ever either. So, you understand why the NHL does it. And I kind of still like the shootouts, because you can see some pretty sick goals that way, right? I mean, credit to Erik Karlsson for going with the Brian Rolston slap shot to win it that night. Everything was fantastic about Erik Karlsson that night. I was in the post game with him while he's eating an apple, and I was just so
casual.
This dude and his swag, like it was epic. But no, I mean, I think, Kirill Kaprizov, I can't wait for him to really dazzle us with some of the shootout moves. And Matt Zuccarello is a known shootout scorer. He hasn't scored yet in the shootout, but part of me also just likes that, because I think it can be really, really fun to watch. It gives those guys a chance to show them what they got. And I respect and like your idea of it's a team sport, right? Yeah. And really it's kind of,
and I know it's such like a
hangs
small,
on a goalie. And,
it's such a small thing to be mad about in the grand scheme of things when it comes to hockey. And Grant, you're not going to see 1 million shootouts in a season, right? I mean, you're going to see more games end in overtime than teams going to a shootout. But every time they happen, I'm just like, man, I'm so annoyed by this. Like, I want to watch, I want to see, the teams grind this out. You got this far, now win this as a team. And, I don't know if Wild fans remember, was it 2 years ago when Ryan Johansson scored on the shootout 2 consecutive games the same way, and I swear to God it was an illegal move, and I was so worked up about it. I was like,
because
the puck
stopped. It looked like the puck stopped. That's why I remember covering that game, and it was like, he did the same thing last time. The puck isn't moving. Like, he can't do that. Like, yeah, it was so frustrating.
Death to the shootout in summary.
That's when Nashville was, like, epic, right?
Yes,
like, Nashville was on a whole other
level.
I
was like, I can't believe this man did this twice, and they just let it slide. So,
God, I tell you what.
I'll go all day if we don't move on to another topic.
When Alexis is commissioner of the NHL, that's going to be her first thing. She's going to take out the shootouts. If you are commissioner or president of the Minnesota State High School League, my next question to you then is, would you have allowed Hill Murray to play in the tournament this year, despite the contact tracing, having faced an opponent with COVID? For those of you who aren't caught up on this, I know it'll be kind of past news, but I still wanted to talk about it a little bit because I think it's important.
To talk about,
Hill Murray not allowed to compete in the AA and defend their championship that they had won last year due to their former opponent, the White Bear Lake Bears, having some COVID issues on their squad, and the Hill Murray not having, as I understand it, a JV team that would be ready and suitable to play. So, Alexis, what would you have done in that situation?
Okay.
Did the league make the right call?
Couple things on this. One, I 100% understand and believe in following protocol to keep people safe. 2, that does not make me believe that they necessarily did the right thing. They could have easily pushed out the game and said, hey, we're just waiting to confirm a couple more things, make sure everyone is safe and healthy before we can play this game. Would it have hurt anybody to push the game out a day? Would it really have? I mean, are you saying that you're not willing to make a schedule change or give these kids a chance to play? So that's kind of what upset me about it, is not so much like that I think like Hill Murray 100% should play, but it's just like you could have followed all the rules and still found a way to make this work and give these kids this opportunity. Secondly, I don't think that just because it's Hill Murray means they should get special treatment. I don't care that they won last year. If this would have been any team, I would have felt the same way. It doesn't matter if it was a team who would be a dark horse or a defending champ. That makes no effect on how I feel about this. And lastly, I just think that, these kids worked so hard this year, went through so much to get to play in this season, to get to this point. The fall teams didn't get a tournament, didn't get tournaments. You get to the winter season, you get it postponed, you finally get to play it, and you get to the part of the season that everybody works so hard for. Everyone wants to play in the state tournament, especially here in Minnesota. That is a part of your career, if you go on to play professionally, that you never forget. Even if you don't, that's just a highlight of a kid's life here in Minnesota as a hockey player. So I would have liked to see them follow the rules, but still find a way to maybe make it happen, because I think they could have done more to do that. Whether they wanted to take the time and energy to figure that out, that's, I don't know what those conversations looked like. But it is disappointing. I think there might've been ways to keep everyone safe and still do it. What do you think, Jesse?
I mean, I'm torn on it, right? Because I agree with you. I think the league has to try to do what's right, and they can't bend the rules, especially for a school like Hill Murray.
And you can't play favorites.
My whole family went to Hill Murray. My cousins still go there. My dad's a Hill Murray graduate, so I grew up a Pioneers fan, believe it or not. And I felt like them suing putting
that was a little much.
The league. It was a very Hill Murray thing to do. I'm sorry, much. Like it was a little ridiculous. But
I did laugh at that.
Yeah, I did. I was like, oh, these Karens. Like, all right. Sorry, Pioneers fans. But and like I said, my family's one of you, so
right,
sorry.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the biggest difference is Hill Murray's situation isn't what Hermantown's situation was, right? So I think, I know you hate to do that and take it situation by situation, but truly this was a very different situation. They didn't have players that tested positive. It was contact tracing, and Hill Murray went out of their way to say, yep, this can work. I do wonder how scheduling had played a part in them rescheduling it, because the girls are at the XL Energy Center as well. So I imagine that was probably an issue, but I don't know if you could still have moved it to an offsite location or whatnot. I just think sometimes what gets me about the high school league is how rigid it can be, right? There's a lot, and I'll kind of leave it at that, but
they make it very hard to do a lot of things.
Yes. Like sometimes it doesn't feel like they truly are looking out for the best interest of their student athletes necessarily.
Or the community.
I think, exactly. Like that's where I disagree a little bit, but I do see both sides, because again, you bend the rules for Hill Murray.
Yep. Everyone wants the rules
why didn't you do it for Centennial Girls? Why couldn't we do something for Hermantown? You can't make or break it, defending champs or not, or a fuss made or not. That's just not how it works. And to my understanding, for those, because I had to do this research myself too, they couldn't field a JV team because their JV team hasn't played in about 5 weeks. And a lot of those kids were gone on spring break. So that's why they couldn't pull a Hermantown situation where Hermantown had their JV squad up and ready to go to play, but Hill-Murray didn't have that luxury. So that's where they weren't able to move forward. Again, it sucks. My heart does, like you said, Alexis, goes out to those kids, especially the ones that wanted that second chance, right? Or those seniors that won't have this chance again, because it's something that's truly, truly special. And unfortunately, that's the place that we're in the world. So we'll leave it at that. Bummer for them, but good on the league for getting the tournament going in a safe way. Fun. Except Gentry Academy should never be allowed to play ever again. But that's just my take on that.
Yes, private schools need their own section.
They're not even a private school. They are like, I've been fighting this argument all weekend with people because it has nothing to do with them destroying Matamita. I promise it's not a biased take.
It's like my beef with shootouts.
Just Gentry is a hockey factory. You have kids from Texas and Alaska that are there to play hockey. They are not there. Like Hill-Murray is just cherry picking North St. Paul kids. Fine. At least they're still Minnesota kids. Yeah. Like St. Thomas is plucking Matamita kids.
All is fair in love and hockey.
So that's where Gentry, I feel like, shouldn't be allowed. And if they're going to play, then they need to move up to AA. Hill-Murray did it. St. Thomas eventually did it.
We're going to double down on
that.
We'll
get you.
We said it last episode. We're saying it again. Move Gentry up to AA.
Trash. Right now I saw they were losing to East Grand Forks, so I'm not sure if that's still the case. Good. But Gentry Academy people are like, these guys suck. But and finally, before we get into our segment 2 here with Jess Myers and Bruce Ciskie and some college hockey talk, Bill Guerin, Team USA Assistant General Manager of the 2022 Olympics, still not confirmed that NHL players will be participating in the Olympics. Those are ongoing discussions. Pat Kelleher, Executive Director of USA Hockey, had said he remains very hopeful. Stan Bowman of the Chicago Blackhawks is the main GM of that squad. Naturally, if NHL players do not compete, those two will step down and somebody will be named in their place. But very exciting for Mr. Bill Guerin. I know he was very honored. He has worn the Olympic Team USA 3 times. He has competed in World Juniors. A true American-born guy, so congrats to him. And then speaking of American-born, in fact, Massachusetts-born, Matt Boldy signs after his sophomore year at BC after the St. Cloud Huskies defeated the Eagles in the NCAA tournament. Boldy signs here with the Minnesota Wild. Alexis, were you surprised that he signed, or did you kind of see that it was probably going to happen?
Not really. I kind of thought it could go either way. So I wouldn't have been surprised with either decision. It is exciting because it's somebody that Wild fans have been excited about for a while. We got a chance to chat with him in an earlier episode for Bardown
so
Beauties.
57, if you guys want to go back and listen
you
to
had that holstered and ready. I started that sentence. I was like, you know what? I don't even know what episode it is. Episode 57. Yeah, we got to chat with him. And, he was playing in college with other Wild prospects, which is exciting. His team is doing really well. An unfortunate loss in the NCAA tournament. But I'm excited to see him, get ready to play long-term with the Minnesota Wild. He'll, after quarantine, go down and play with the Iowa Wild. And then from there, we'll see what happens. So I'm excited about it and excited to see what he does because Wild fans have been looking forward to him being a part of this team for a while. I think especially after seeing him in the World Juniors and the way he played there. If anyone wasn't excited before, they were definitely excited after that.
His stock rose quite quickly at World Juniors. And again, just a better sophomore showing his freshman year. There were a lot of struggles. So it was easy to look at Cole Caulfield, who obviously was passed on, and say, wow, look at Cole, not Boldy. But Boldy really came into his own. He looks stronger. He looks pretty NHL ready. But Bill Guerin did say, we're not going to rush him. Of course, he's aware of how everybody here wants him. And actually, he sees him as a winger. So that's a position, that the Wild have plenty to choose from right now, right? If he was a center, I think it would be a little bit easier to say, yep, he's coming right in. But for now, he will
at the very least just to take face-offs, right? I mean,
geez. I avoided that conversation this week because I'm sure that we need a whole other segment on face-offs. We'll give that to you. If you guys want it, let us know. We'll give it to you. So I think, they're going to approach it as they should. Like, let's make sure that we set him up for success and we can really develop a player.
And that was kind of my, that was kind of my whole thing with him when people would ask me, like, do you want him to sign? Do you want him to sign? I'm like, I don't think there's a need for him immediately on this Wild team. So to me, there's no rush. If he signs, great. Have more time to work on his development, get to know some of the guys on the Iowa Wild who he might be playing up with at the Minnesota Wild. But to me, there wasn't a rush. So I was like, you know what? If he signs, awesome. If he doesn't, that's another year to play some college hockey. So excited to see him sign, though, in the sense that that's one step closer to him wearing a Minnesota Wild jersey.
He gets to take that next level in his career, and no doubt he will have an impact. And you could still see him, cap space and cap restrictions don't apply to the playoffs. So that could certainly be a time that we see him more, or if there's an injury and it opens up a spot, because I do think they are keeping a close eye on how quickly they can get him into the lineup. So congrats to him. Shout out to Mr. Boldy. We're excited to have you here in the state of hockey and a part of the organization officially. Before I let you go, before we take our next break, I do want to remind you to go check out BettorEdge betting app. It's a completely legal sports betting app, platform rather, that actually allows you to socially connect to. I know coming up in the playoffs, I'm going to be on there. You guys get to compete against me. You all know how great I am at predictions.
She's competitive, so
I'm so goddamn competitive. I hate losing all the time. There's my problem. My weakness is I chirp too quickly. Like I'm like, oh, I'm winning, and then the next day it's done. And I'm like, but no, certainly go check it out. If you use code BEAUTS, BEAUTS, you'll get a free $10 to play with. They have more than just hockey. Obviously, they've got NCAA basketball, NBA basketball, NFL, all that good stuff. Completely legal, a lot of fun, a really cool app. Visit BettorEdge, BETTOR, edge.com, and go check it out. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
We want you to help us design the next line of Bardown Beauties Teespring merchandise. What pod-related bit should we toss on some gear? Stay tuned to our social channels, and in the meantime, continue to shop current lines at Teespring under Bardown Beauties.
We're back. Joining us now, we've got a 2-for-1 college hockey special today, tapping in on the great writing wits and radio voice of Jess Myers and Gopher hockey beat writer for Rink Live. Also, Bruce Ciskie, radio play-by-play for your UMD Bulldogs. For those of you watching, in case you couldn't tell which is which, Bruce is with the Bulldogs gear and the Rink Live over here with Mr. Jess Myers. Gents, do we really have anything to talk about? I'm not quite sure if there's much to really chat on today.
Here's how you can tell the difference. Bruce's team is still playing, so he's still got the playoff face. I shaved off my goatee over the weekend, or last week after that loss to Minnesota State Mankato. So
yeah, that'll happen. Let's start with the winning team, I guess. First, if you don't mind, Bruce, we'll go over to you. 5 overtimes. Everyone talked about it. You had to work a 5 overtime game. How was your voice after that? And
not good.
What was that day like for you? Obviously, even better with the Bulldogs coming out on the winning end of things.
I think the 2 happiest people on earth were my wife and kid the next day, because there was not a whole lot of speaking, and the speaking that was happening was very, very quiet, because the vocal cords don't want to work after you called a 5 overtime game by yourself the day before. And I would have stayed 3-4 more overtimes if that's what it took. It was the outcome we wanted, and it's a great thing to see him back in the Frozen Four, and the voice is fully recovered, so we're ready for Thursday.
Yeah, what do you have to do to get your voice ready then? Was there remedies that you were getting to make sure you would be ready for Thursday?
Drink a lot of water and try not to speak a lot, which when you're on the radio for 5-6 hours a day can be very difficult, but I did the best I could, and it took a couple days, but I felt normal again, Wednesday, Thursday. And then I, just to throw a monkey wrench in the whole thing, went and got my first COVID vaccine shot on Tuesday. So that was a whole difference. I had it in November, and so the first shot, I did get some symptoms, and I had to deal with that too.
And on the topic of COVID, I guess, Jess, if you want to answer this first. I mean, we saw teams who unfortunately were not able to compete in this year's tournament because COVID. I mean, how disappointing is that, especially when you look at some of the programs? It was Notre Dame and your Michigan, teams that could have had a really good chance to move forward and unfortunately were not able to participate. Jess, what are your thoughts?
If you wrote a big story about how this was kind of the year for Big Ten hockey, and Big Ten hockey was here to stay and yada, yada, like I happen to do, then before a game is even played, 2 of the 4 teams are out, and then Wisconsin decides they're not interested in really playing hockey against Bemidji State. Yeah, from that standpoint, it was tough. I just felt so terrible for Notre Dame and Michigan, obviously. We kind of knew most of the season that Michigan was going to be in the tournament. They have a very, very good team, a fantastic freshman class this year. And I've said all along, if they can keep that freshman class intact, I think Michigan is, pencil them in for the top 4 at the start of next season. season. So for them to get knocked out the way they did, and then Notre Dame to kind of scratch and claw and get into the tournament, despite having, and this just bewilders me, they had 11 home losses this year. Notre Dame just could not play at home for whatever reason. And, but they get into the tournament based on some quality road wins that they had. And then they can't go either. I texted both of those coaches and said, I'm reminded of Shakespeare's line about the slings and arrows of outrageous proportion. I mean, what next can go wrong? And that's probably not a question we should ask with all that's transpired in about the last 54 weeks.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Keeping on Big Ten hockey, I'm a big fan of Big Ten hockey because you can't not be, because it's here to stay. There's nothing we can do. We're not changing it. Whine all you want. But the Gophers actually looked like this could be another really strong year. What happened against Minnesota State Mankato, which kills me more because you guys know Dan Myers very well, and it just means we have to hear more of Dan Myers and his victories and his horns up. But what exactly happened there in the Gophers?
Who
yeah, some dude that just talks about Mankato all the time. Yeah. What happened?
Let me say this. First of all, against Omaha, the Gophers looked every bit like the team that we saw most of the season. The team that started out 10-0, the team that was ranked number 1 in the country for 4 weeks, the team that won a Big Ten playoff title. They really kind of flexed their muscle in that game. And, we didn't really know what to expect because the playoffs are just a weird thing. I did a bracket this year, and all of our writers at the Rink Live did brackets, and I hate doing these because, it's just an excuse to look like a fool. Because nothing seems to matter come playoff time. But in that Omaha game, the Gophers looked like the Gophers. I mean, they had 4 lines rolling. They had really good goaltending. They came out and led 3-0 before you could blink. And it's just like, we're out here. We're not messing around. Then one night later, everything changes. And I really don't think, people have said the Gophers had to play the late game. They were fatigued, all of those kinds of things. I don't buy that necessarily. I just think Minnesota State played a perfect road game. They jumped on the Gophers early. They get a 2-0 lead, and then you could not get a shot through to Dryden McKay for the next 2 periods, it seemed like. Gophers had 4 shots on goal in the second period, and it was not for lack of effort. The Mavericks laid out and just said, this is our time. We're going to do this. And, I don't buy the fatigue theory either because the Gophers got better as the game went on. The second period, they were stronger. The third period, they were stronger, but it was just one of those things. And we saw a few frustrating games like that for the Gophers this year where, try as they might, they just couldn't get anything going. I mean, you expect that playing Notre Dame. Yeah, because that's their style, is that defensive lockdown, boa constrictor, just kind of slowly strangle you kind of style. You didn't expect that from Minnesota State, but hey, you can't help but be happy for the Mavericks, and not to mention anyone who claims to be related to me, but some of those long-suffering fans, and having gone through those NCAA tournament losses that they've had, to see where this program came from and see them heading to the Frozen Four. That's a really cool story. So a nice consolation prize if you're a hockey fan in Minnesota.
Exactly. Did you tell Bob Motzko that you disagreed with him, that it didn't have anything to do? Because I saw those comments that he
I was going to say, you're not naming names, but we know who you're talking about.
Let me say this on that topic, because there was a lot of talk, and Bob Motzko said after the game he didn't feel it was right that they had to play the late game on Friday and then play the late game again on Saturday. It brings up a bigger issue, I think, and Bruce, maybe you can attest to this. And in talking with Bob Motzko, he mentioned this. Imagine that Minnesota UMD game. Imagine that UMD-UND game that you called 5 overtimes. Imagine if that was the first game of the regional tournament. What do you do the next day? Do you truly expect one of those teams to come back on maybe 20 hours rest, having played 2 full hockey games? So the bigger issue I think it brings up is not necessarily who plays early, who plays late, but why is college hockey treated differently than college basketball, than college soccer, than just about every other college sport where there's a day off between regional games? Everybody gets a game, they get a day off. If you win, you get a day to rest, and then you get another game. And college hockey is maybe one of the rare sports that's treated differently than that, where you play back-to-back no matter what the situation is. I think that will be the issue that people talk about more so necessarily than what time teams play, because we all know that ESPN and those folks are going to dictate the game times. They want the marquee matchups. They want the University of Minnesota in prime time and all that. Now, that manifests itself in a 9 p.m. Central Time start, which was tough for everybody, especially those of us who write on deadline. But I think those are issues that we'll hear more about in the coming weeks as the coaches gather after the tournament's over.
I mean, or you just get a bye like UMD did, right? And then that's how you kind of look through it. No, Bruce, what are your thoughts to that matter?
I said during the selection show, as soon as they flashed the game times, I thought Minnesota and North Dakota had every right to be pissed because they were stuck in late games. And to me, the top seed should either get the early game or at least the option of the early game. I don't get, we're talking, yes, I know ESPN controls the stuff. We're talking about 25, 30,000 people difference in the viewership of these games. Mm-hmm. The diehard college hockey fans are watching, and pretty much nobody else is. I mean, North Dakota UMD went 5 overtimes. It was getting buzz on SportsCenter. It was getting all this national trending on social media, and they averaged under 200,000 viewers for that game. We're not talking about a significant number here. I don't know why we can't have the top seed play. If we're going to continue to do back-to-back days, and Jess is right, we probably shouldn't be doing back-to-back days in this tournament, but if they're going to continue to do that, then the top seed should have the option of playing the early game, and the number 2 seed should play the second game, because the top seed deserves the protection of the, yes, it's an extra 3-4 hours of rest, but it can be significant, that extra 3 or 4 hours of rest. And I think Brad Schlosser had done some sort of homework on this in previous years and found that when the top seed was not in the early game, their success rate in the regional final wasn't as high. So I do think that there's something to be said for that. And if we're going to keep going down this path and saving money by having a 2-day regional tournament, the least they could do is make sure the top seed is protected a little better than they are right now.
We're talking to you, NCAA. Listen up. We know our shit, so do it.
Yeah, what do you think, Bruce? If the Bulldogs played, in that first game, went to 5 overtimes, won, and had to play the next night, as good as that UMD team is, who probably deservedly is going to the Frozen Four, do you think they would have stood a chance in a second game after playing a game like that?
The only comparison I can draw is 2017, and the difference there is that BU had played North Dakota in the early game. That game went double overtime. UMD's game only went 1 overtime, but it started 2 hours later than it was supposed to. Yeah. I don't know. I don't pretend to have any idea what would have happened the next day. But I can tell you this, I hadn't known this, but Elliot Friedman, when he wrote his 31 Thoughts this week, he wrote about Ryan Fancy and the UMD goaltender that had to come into the game in the 4th overtime. And he noted in his article, it says that if that game had gone to the 5th overtime intermission, they were considering stopping it and picking it up the next day, which was something I hadn't heard before. And Jess, I don't think it's even in the rules.
Hey, anything's possible at this point. I tweeted this, but my favorite story from, what was that? That was Saturday night? Yeah,
Saturday night to Sunday morning, yes.
So I'm in Loveland, Colorado, so, I'm an hour earlier, all that. I have a good friend, my friend Nuala Johnson, a friend of mine from UMD. We went to school together. She is on a plane heading to Las Vegas and is like taxiing at MSP Airport and is sending me messages, what's up with the game? And I said, Bulldogs just scored in the first overtime. They're going to the Frozen Four. Oh, wait, hang on. And she says, hurry.
Yes.
Yelled at by the flight attendant. I've got to turn my phone off. I said, the goal doesn't count. Sends an expletive and then turns her phone off. Okay. 3.5 hours later, she lands in Las Vegas and texts me and says, who won? And I said, I will let you know when it's over. I mean, it's just so she didn't miss any of regulation.
No.
Wow.
Air for 3.5 hours and didn't miss a goal.
Yeah, I was working a shift. I'm a waitress, and I was working a shift that night, and it kind of slowed down enough in the night to where I could stop and watch the TVs and pay attention to what was happening in the game. And I saw the UMD first overtime goal gets scored. I'm, kind of clapping. Everyone in the restaurant's kind of, chatting about it. And I run into the kitchen and I come back out and they're reviewing it. And I'm like, what happened? So I watch and I see it get called off. By the time I leave work that night, I think it was heading into the 3rd or 4th overtime. I'm thinking, man, I'm going to miss it. By the time I get home, game's going to be over. Well, that didn't happen. I'm sitting there thinking, watching. I'm like, okay, I'm tired. I got to work tomorrow morning. Do I go to bed? Do I stay up? What do I do? I mean, it's one of those things where history's being made and you're like, do I sit and watch the rest of this game or what do I do? And I know I couldn't imagine, Bruce, you being on the call for that and just seeing how that all unfolded and knowing, hey, this is history's being made right now. There's a lot being talked about on social media about this. That had to have been, it's an exciting night as a college hockey fan, especially in Minnesota. I mean, everyone was rooting against UND, right? We can all agree on that.
I mean,
right?
That's true. I will say I cheered for the Bulldogs only because my hatred for UND shines even stronger. But yeah,
Jesse,
I mean,
Jesse, I know you're a Gopher fan by heart. When I met you told me you were a Gopher fan. That's fine.
Yes.
God bless you. There are a lot of them in the state. This is one thing I love, and you just proved it. Gopher fans cheer for the Bulldogs when all things are the same. Okay? Most Bulldogs fans I know would have their knuckles cut off. Cheer for Gophers. It's absolutely a one-way street. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, you know some of the Bulldog people that I know. You guys both do. We got Shrek, Chris Ortlet, and then we've got my cousins as well. And so they made me hate the Bulldogs because of their constant chirping. I'm like, okay, now I hate you. Like I had no problem with you, and now you've turned me against the Bulldogs. So I will. I mean, at the end of the day, I love Minnesota schools. And again, this year we could talk on and on, right, about how you had the 5 represented and how all of them won their first round games there. So that was definitely exciting. But back to Alexa's question, what was it like, Bruce, to be a part of history, really? And what did you think when that goal went in and then was called off? Did you envision that this was going to go to 4 more overtime periods after the first one?
First off, just to dovetail off what you were just talking about, we were out to dinner last week with the restaurant guy comes over, a friend of mine, and we're chatting, and he talks about how they were at the Frozen Four in 2011 when UMD won in St. Paul, and there was North Dakota fans around them, and they're all cheering for UMD. And I said, well, that won't happen again. At this point in time, North Dakota fans would probably get their knuckles cut off for the Bulldogs. Mm-hmm. They've seen about enough of UMD winning. So I know, when they scored, I had no reason to think it wouldn't count. Then you see the officials kind of milling around doing their thing and chatting. I'm like, oh, boy. And, well, I'm calling off a stream in the studio in Duluth. So I'm like a minute or so behind the actual live action. So the first thing I do is I jump on Twitter because I know there's reporters that are at the game. And I see that they're looking for an offside. And then before I can see anything else, they show the replay on TV. I'm like, well, that's offside. And the question becomes, are they going to do what they did in the BU game earlier against St. Cloud and say, the hell with it, we're going to count it anyways, which was ridiculous. And luckily it didn't have an effect on the outcome of the game. Or are they actually going to call by the rule book and say, that's offside, which it was. And they ultimately got it right. And it gave me a right to be, momentarily pissed because they wouldn't call the one off earlier on BU and make that example of it. But the reality is that offsides is offsides. It's kind of black and white in the rule book. So did I know it was going to go very long? I had no clue. I thought North Dakota was going to win that game in the first minute of overtime. So the way that they came out, and frankly, there's a couple spots in the second overtime, I thought, well, this is going to be over in a couple of minutes and then I can pack up and go home. And then UMD starts to settle back into its game a little bit. And next thing you know, we're into a third overtime, and then we're into a fourth overtime. And I'm running out of stuff to put on during intermissions and starting to think, who can I call? Who's awake right now? Jess, you almost got a text. I'm not going to lie to you.
Me. I was awake. I was hanging out because I wanted to go to bed. Every ounce of me was like, those kids are going to be up at 6 a.m.
The thought process becomes, do I want to sit here for 20 minutes and actually talk to somebody? Or do I just want to keep running stuff out of the archive so I can give myself a breather? Yeah. So I settled in on giving myself a breather and not calling anybody. And it worked out just fine. I still had plenty of content left. I could have played all night.
Yeah. No matter
all those exciting games that we went through that we've talked about here, I'm a Gopher fan too at heart. That's what I grew up. So I hated to see my Gophers out as well, but we've made it to our Frozen Four teams. There's 4 remaining. 3 of them are Minnesota teams, which is so awesome. Being a Minnesota fan and, whatever of the Minnesota teams you were cheering for, you just got to be excited. At least 3 of them made it to the Final Four or to the Frozen Four. Of those 3 teams remaining, Jess, let's start with you. Who do you think has the best chance to win it all, if it's a Minnesota team?
I think the best team remaining is probably St. Cloud State. I just really like what Brett Larson has done this year. With that said, I would never, ever, ever bet my own money against Scott Sandelin in state playoffs. I just, and you talk about having the best team and, the old adage. I said this to somebody last week. I said the old adage is 9 times out of 10, the coach who steps off the bus with the best team behind him is going to win a game. And I said, and the 10th time it's Scott Sandelin. Anything away from this Bulldogs team. It's a very good hockey team, but I don't think you would match them up among the 16 teams that are in the NCAA tournament and say, these guys are unstoppable, but they find a way. So I really think we could see a Huskies-Bulldogs final. And you talk about a fantastic game. And as a writer, you love storylines. Well, tell me there are better storylines out there anywhere than Brett Larson against, not only his alma mater, but the place that he coached against his coaching mentor. I mean, we already had the Scott Sandelin versus his alma mater game. There are ties everywhere. I mean, Mike Hastings was a Gophers coach for a while from Northern Minnesota. He went to St. Cloud State. I mean, the connections between all of these teams is just fantastic. Selfishly, as a guy who covers the Gophers, I was loving the idea of a Huskies Gophers semifinal with the Perbix brothers and the Brodzinski brothers.
Yes.
Fate stepped in a couple ways. Number one, the Gophers got beat. Number two, Easton Brodzinski suffered that horrific injury, and thoughts and prayers to him as he makes a recovery. Just a fantastic player and an outstanding family, and you hate to see anybody get injured, but man, that one was tough to watch. So tough that he can't play in the Frozen Four, but this is a really good Huskies team. I just think talent wise they're the best team remaining.
Well, Bruce, I think we know who you're going to say, but surprise us, if you will.
So I've had conversations, obviously, with a lot of people over the years and learned a lot of stuff. And I've heard it from multiple people. Noah Cates, the Bulldog captain, just said it again to me week before last. The team that's the most together is the one that's going to win. Mm-hmm. And his team is pretty together, as you could probably tell Saturday night / Sunday morning. But you could make this argument for all four of these teams. UMass has got a chip on its shoulder after what happened in 2019. That's a really good hockey team that was pretty much ground into road salt by UMD for 60 minutes in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. You got a Minnesota State team that took and hoisted that large primate off its back Saturday night, that win over Quinnipiac, and then played like they had hoisted a large primate off their back Sunday against the Gophers. That was a relaxed, free, almost perfect game for Minnesota State. They're pretty together right now. And then you got St. Cloud State. And obviously, Brett's going to have him playing at a high level at this time of year because he knows what it takes to win this time of year. Throw in what happened to Easton Brodzinski, the freakiest of freakish injuries. And grateful to hear that it looks like he's going to make a full recovery. Brett told me today he gets to go to the Frozen Four, which is great. He'll at least get to experience being at the Frozen Four, even if he can't play in the Frozen Four. But if you don't think that type of thing's not going to bring a team together, you're wrong. So you got four pretty together teams going to Pittsburgh next week.
It's going to be exciting. I know. I'm thrilled to watch it. And you guys have both mentioned the coaches for these programs. I mean, Scott Sandlin, Mike Hastings, Brett Larson, and I think they have done just tremendous work in turning these programs into true contenders and powerhouses really every single year. Would you agree? I mean, what is it about Scott Sandlin, Bruce, that has taken this program to new heights and to a new level over the past couple of years?
He's been able to identify the types of players he wants. He has the types of coaches he wants working with him. There's no secret to this formula. They try to grind you down offensively. They try to play strong defensively, block shots. They've got good goaltending. Brant Nicklin he's the goalie whisperer, man. He's one of the best goalie coaches out there, and the university doesn't pay him a dime. He's a volunteer goaltending coach, and you're not going to find one better. What he's done with Hunter Miska, Casimir Kaskisuo, who have both played in the NHL this year. You throw in, obviously Hunter Shepard in the two-time All-American career he put together and the record start streak and everything he did at UMD. And now he's got Zach Stejskal and Ryan Fanti. And as you saw last weekend, they can both lead this team to very, very good things because they both had to do it against North Dakota.
Mm-hmm. And shout out to Fanti, who went over and consoled the UND goaltender we saw after that win.
Who officially got the win among those two? Who was
That'd be Ryan Fanti because he was on the ice and the winning goal was scored. So, Ryan Fanti played 17 out of 142 minutes and he got the win, which again proves, as we always say, wins are not a goalie stat.
Yeah, exactly. And Jess, I mean, Bob Motzko and his squad obviously not advancing, but Bob has started to kind of turn that program around and kind of be the new face. And I know you had, I think, tweeted it earlier this year that you wish people could have watched this Gopher team this year because it certainly had elevated from seasons past. I mean, what do you think Bob has been doing right? And do you see him continuing to kind of redirect this ship into the prestigious program that it had been known for?
Let me make a caveat just on what you said, because I always hesitate to say that, the program has been turned around. I would say the program has been revitalized, but man, it's not like this was a disaster under Don Chia. Big Ten titles, which, we could talk about that whole idea among the Gopher fan base that they still don't seem to care about the Big Ten almost 10 years into it now. But like Alexis said earlier, get over it. I mean, they've been in the Big Ten for literally 100 years. Hockey is a relatively new thing to the conference, but it's here to stay. One of my favorite lines from a movie is, it's like The Sopranos. It's over. Find a new show. It's done. Move on with your life.
Is that forgetting Sarah Marshall?
That is forgetting Sarah.
Yeah, it's a great movie. Great flick.
Call, Jesse. Nice.
Great flick.
One of my favorites. Outstanding. But here's what I think Bob Motzko has done is he's just kind of looked at things from a new approach. He's gone to some of his habits that he had at St. Cloud State, where, St. Cloud State is a program where maybe you're not looking at the same guys that Minnesota is looking at. And Bob Motzko took a page out of that. Here's a guy I like to point out, Carl Fish, who played about half their games on defense. Kid out of St. Paul Johnson, inner city St. Paul kid, hardworking, nose to the grindstone kind of kid. Just such a prototypical Bob Motzko player, a guy that wasn't on a lot of all-state teams. He wasn't, the highly touted, that kind of kid, but they saw something in him and, is part of a defensive core. And again, he played about half the games this year. That was a tough lineup to crack on defense this year. You're seeing them, looking at the NAHL and looking at some places that the Gophers maybe didn't look before. I mean, the easy joke about Don Lucia's last few teams is, well, they all played for Edina, There were like 7 Edina guys on that first Bob Motzko team that he had mostly inherited from Lucia. So you're just kind of looking at this program through a new set of eyeballs. And I think that's an important thing in any program to do. You can fall into kind of doing the same thing because we've always done the same thing. And coaches, I think, have a shelf life. And I think Don Lucia, I think he is an absolute college hockey legend. His name, I've said this before, they should have statues to Don Lucia, not only outside of 3M Arena at Mariucci, but outside of the arena at Colorado College, because he truly saved that program in the 1990s and, is truly one of the legends of college hockey. But it was maybe the right time for kind of taking a new look at this program.
Right. And you had mentioned Motzko obviously looking in new areas and looking in new pockets and not getting the best of the best. I mean, how much does that also speak to the fact that you have plenty of other really good Division I schools to look at in Minnesota now? I think in the past it had for as long as we've known, it's the U of M. If you're the best, you go to the U of M. But now you have UMD and St. Cloud and even Bemidji again proving themselves. I mean, how much of a testament do you think, Bruce, it is to just the resurgence of all these programs here in Minnesota?
Well, that plays a part of it, and I think it helps these kids make their decisions because I don't know that you necessarily grow up anymore dreaming to be a Gopher like kids of the 80s did, and that's not a bad thing, by the way. You didn't hear a lot of kids that grew up in the 80s and dreamt to be Huskies or Bemidji State Beavers or Minnesota State Mavericks or even a lot of times UMD Bulldogs. And I remember one of the hype videos before a UMD Minnesota game, Tom Curvers, Hobie Baker Award winner in 1984, talked about how basically he was a Bulldog because the Gophers didn't want him. And that there was a lot of that.
So he actually was a Gopher reject?
Yeah.
he said basically unwanted by my hometown team. So you can take that however you'd like. Mm-hmm. He did not say he was a Gopher reject, even if he implied it. But no, I think nowadays you've got kids they've got options, and they're going to look for the right fit. Do they want the nicest, glitziest facilities? Do they look at the banners that are hanging in Amsoil that don't have dust on them and think, oh, that's kind of cool? Or do they look at the tradition, the unbelievable tradition of Minnesota Gopher hockey for years upon years? And you know what? I want to be the guy that puts a banner back in that building after a few-year hiatus. See, there's a lot of reasons to go to all these schools depending on the personality of the kid. It's absolutely a good thing. I think it's great that all 5 of these teams got in the tournament. I wish Bemidji had beaten UMass. We'd have an all-Minnesota Frozen Four this week. It would have been great.
It would have been so great.
John Butcher-Gross would have lost his mind.
Yeah, I know.
It might. We would have enjoyed it, though.
To that point, Bruce, growing up in the atmosphere that you and I grew up in, with 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where it was the Gophers, 1A, and then the Bulldogs below that, and then maybe the Huskies below that, and there was kind of that pecking order. I thought about that as well. Bemidji State beats UMass, and we have 4 Minnesota teams in the Frozen Four, and none of them are the Gophers. I mean, that would be hard to fathom, just with the way things things were, but that's not the way things are anymore. And we haven't talked about St. Thomas yet.
I was just going to redirect it there because now they've made their coach hiring today. Alexis and I to discuss that in segment 1. A fantastic move, I think, by the Tommies. I mean, a very renowned coach in Rico and has the experience. I mean, I can't remember who had said it that, it's not a Minnesota guy, and we know Minnesota loves Minnesota. But, what are your guys' takes on St. Thomas's addition to Division I and Enrico taking over the reins there?
Well, I think that the fact that he's from Toronto originally and coached at Miami of Ohio, I think that would only matter if Minnesota hockey fans are provincial in any way, and I've never seen it. A fantastic hire for them. A guy who, for all intents and purposes, built a program at Miami. He took a perennial CCHA, also ran. He had them in the Frozen Four. He had them literally within a minute of a national championship. One of all those Frozen Fours I've attended, I cannot think of a more heartbreaking.
How many Frozen Fours is it, by the way?
It will be 28 next. I get to Pittsburgh.
Wow.
28th. But 2009, for people who don't know the story, Washington, D.C., 2009, the Capitals Arena. I think it was 3-1 Miami with literally a minute left in the national championship game. Boston University pulls their goalie. They get a goal. They pull their goalie again. They get another goal. They go to overtime. BU wins in overtime. And you talk about just something that will rip your heart out. But that was just a huge step forward for that program. They won their first Hobie under Rico Blasi. He didn't have the success in the NCHC that he had when they were in the CCHA. So that is one question mark is where the St. Thomas program will be. They're going to need a rink. Let's be honest. Playing in the 800 seat or whatever it is, St. Thomas Ice Arena out in Mendota Heights is a good temporary solution. It's not a good long-term solution. They're going to have to build a facility. But this is one thing that interests me. I could travel to most of the Gophers games, home and road. Not this past season, but a season before, I was out at Notre Dame. Notre Dame, obviously the most prominent Catholic athletic school in the country. Every good Catholic kid wants to play for the Irish because, Father Mike told him that that's what he should do if he's a good Catholic boy. I had maybe 3, maybe 4 people from Notre Dame with the program, people associated with the school, come up to me and say, so tell me about St. Thomas. What are they all about? What is this school? Don't think there's not some concern among a school like Notre Dame that, hey, wait a minute. Now there's going to be a good Catholic school with Division I hockey right in the heart of the Twin Cities where all these good Notre Dame players come out of. So there's that element to it. But I just think this is a fun time for college hockey in Minnesota. And congrats to Rico Blasi. Look forward to working with you with the Tommies.
What do you think, Bruce?
First off, I can't believe Jess didn't bring this thing even closer to home. The guy that assisted, the primary assistant in the tying goal in that comeback win for BU in 2009 was Mick Bonino, who now plays for the Wild.
Look at you guys. Yeah. God, you're good. You guys are good.
I'm pretty sure Chris Connolly was on that team, too.
Duluth's Chris Connolly, brother of Jack, was on that team. Yep, exactly. Yep. So might have a few memories of that run. That would have been the year that UMD got screwed out of the Frozen Four by a lame man in the crease call it Mariucci, too. I'm not going to say that, though, out loud. Anyway.
The original Minneapolis Miracle, by the way.
Hockey did it first.
Right. The St. Thomas, I think it's a good hire, and there's 2 reasons I do. Number one, Rico's a name, and normally I would roll my eyes at the new guy hiring the name coach. But in this case, I don't, because there's like 500 kids in the NCAA transfer portal that are looking for a place to play hockey next season. And they may look at this and say, first-year program, whatever, but Rico is a guy that's had a lot of success. A lot of people know who he is. I think that might help them bring some of these players in, and St. Thomas might have a more competitive team right out of the gates than they normally would. I think that's a good thing for them. And then 2, as Jess said, they need a building. Well, Rico helped get that building done in Oxford. He knows how to make that type of thing happen. He's got experience in that area. I think those are 2 critical things for St. Thomas right now, and I think Rico's a smart hire for both of those reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it reminded me a little bit more of the Penn State route, right? Penn State hires a name and Guy Godowski and brings him as coaching versus the Arizona route where you kind of are trying an unknown and keeping with your program tradition. So I agree. I kind of just like that. The name that he brings and the attention that he can help bring.
I was in Tempe, by the way, earlier this week. I drove by the site. They are building a rink there. I can confirm. They're talking about Arizona State's new hockey rink for longer than they've actually program. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Kids see construction cranes and bulldozers. So unless it's all just a big facade because they knew I was coming, they are actually building hockey.
Hey, we heard Jess Myers is in town. Let's get this thing. Let's make it look. Get that layout down. So.
And by the way, Penn State, before hiring Guy Gadowski, did interview Scott Sandelin. I should point that out.
Oh,
that happened.
Wow.
Yep.
And what was his reason for saying no? Did you prod him on it?
I didn't actually, but I'm glad he did. So
yeah, that was before his big payday recently, right?
That's worked out really well for us.
Interesting connection there. Wendy Sandelin, Scott's wife, and the
shoveler of the family,
who has a husband and a son in the Frozen Four this year. Wendy Sandelin is a Penn State grad, so there was a connection there. Because,
look at all these circles.
She had gone to school there. Yeah, everything is connected.
These guys know everything. This is why we brought you guys on. You know everything. But before we let you go, obviously we kind of already touched on it because you guys made your prediction for specifically the Minnesota schools that will succeed. But in general, do you think it's going to be a Minnesota team? I mean, the odds are in the favor. You got 3 to choose from. 75% chance that there's a Minnesota team claiming the NCAA Men's Division I championship. But who do you think it will be, and why? And if it's Duluth, if you choose Duluth, does this count as a title? Are they the defending champs, even though there was no tournament?
Yeah, 100% they are.
Okay, just just clear the air on that. Just make sure. All right, so Bruce, why don't you start us off? Who do you think is going to win the tournament this coming weekend?
I'm first off going to offer caution because this kind of happened in 2018 in St. Paul when there were 3 Big Ten teams and UMD in the Frozen Four, and there was a 75% chance a Big Ten team was going to win the national championship, and UMD won the national championship. So if we're going to go full circle with life, then UMass is probably going to win the whole thing. But I'm obviously hoping that doesn't happen. I believe UMD is going to beat UMass. I don't think it's going to be nearly as easy as it was in 2019. But I think they're going to, as Jess said earlier, they're going to find a way because that's what UMD does. And it's hard for me to pick against Brett Larson and his team right now after watching what they did out east last weekend against BC and BU and watching how they responded when Easton Rodzinski suffered that awful injury on Sunday. That can sink a lot of teams to lose their leading goal scorer in the fashion that they did. And it didn't sink them. At least it didn't look like it did. It made them a better team. I think St. Cloud State and UMD are going to play for the national championship next Saturday, and I don't have a coin handy, so I can't flip who's going to.
Jess, what about you?
Well, as anybody who follows us on Twitter knows from football season, Bruce and I agree on pretty much everything. So yeah,
yeah, right.
I've got a Bulldogs Huskies final as well, and I'll be bold and at risk of all that alumni money I get. I'm going to say the Huskies are going to prevail.
There we go.
Alexis is liking that as an alum.
Yeah, I'm a former Husky. Yep, I like those picks, but I agree. I think
Alexis, did you graduate from St. Cloud State?
I did. Yep, in 2019.
Well, so then I'm sorry, you're not a former Husky. You're a Husky.
Forever.
Yes, you are. Husky for life. That's it. Yep, he's right.
I always tell people I'm a Bulldog.
There we go.
For good or bad, I've got the degree.
Change of mindset. I'm a Husky and I'm rooting for the Huskies, but I agree. I think it's tough to pick between all the 3 Minnesota schools and UMass as well. I would love to see a Bulldogs and Huskies final, and I'm pulling for the Huskies. Jesse, throw out your prediction now. What do you got?
I mean, to stay on brand, I can't cheer for Duluth, so I'm going to cheer for no. I do. I would love to see the Huskies take it, just because I like what Brett Larson has really done there, and just get some new blood again. Just get somebody else in to win a title, bring a banner home. But I think Brett Larson has his team in kind of the right mindset and the right position to do so. I also, part of me, it's weird for me to say, but because I love Mike Hastings. I really think Mike Hastings is doing really good things down south, and I don't feel like he gets the recognition, and that program doesn't really get some of the recognition that they deserve. I mean, again, we saw them completely manhandle the Gophers, and as Jess had said, it was a perfect game by Minnesota State. They 100% deserved to win every second of that, and they just looked like the far superior team. So I wouldn't even hate that, but I will choose the Huskies because I can only choose one. St. Cloud State's my champion this year.
Well, with that said, Jesse, I mean, NCAA tournament time, the team with the best goalie has a huge advantage. I don't think I argue Dryden McKay is the best goalie in this tournament. So,
yes.
He's given up. He had a shutout in the regional. And part of that, the great quote from Dryden McKay after the game, he noted he had 22 saves and his defense blocked 23 shots.
Yeah.
He literally had less work to do than the guys in And he said, my job was pretty easy, and take nothing away from him, but I just don't think we've maybe given enough credit to the Mavericks, because that's a rock solid hockey team, top to 100%. Bottom. They've got at least 3 lines that they can roll. They've got really good defense and good young defense, kind of similar to the Gophers. And then again, I think Dryden McKay is the best goalie in this tournament, and maybe the best goalie in college hockey. And when you name a kid Dryden, you're that, so. Yeah.
So what we're saying in summary here throughout this whole interview, anything is possible in the Frozen Four this year.
Yes. Anything can happen, and it always does.
There we go.
Always does.
Every time.
Perfect. I'm so excited to watch. I'm sure all of our listeners are as well. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Bruce. Jess, where can people find you, listen to you, read you, all that good stuff?
TheRinkLive.com. Lots of content there. We've got a whole army of guys covering everybody at the Frozen Four. I'm going to be out there. Mick Hatton's going to be out there. We've got a photographer. We've got Matt Wellens coming with us as well, covering the Bulldogs. So lots of coverage on the scene in Pittsburgh in what is still going to be a weird year, because everything's on Zoom for the most part. And
yeah.
We're tier 3. We've been made clear that we're the least important people. Maybe they'll let us in anyway.
What about you, Bruce? Where can they find you?
The website to stream the games, 8 o'clock Thursday, and hopefully at 6 on Saturday is KDAL610.com. And then I'm at Bruce Ciskie on the Twitters. Follow at your own risk.
Do it. It's pretty good. Unless you want to talk about the high school league. We won't get into it, Bruce. We won't get into it.
It's all good. And by the way, if the Bulldogs do win Thursday and Saturday, the words 3 and Pete will be used so often you'll be sick of them within 10 minutes.
You've received your warning, Buttes.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, this is producer Fred. I just want to ask everyone to go out there and spread the word about Bardown Beauties. Leave us a like, share, thumbs up, review, you name it, we want to hear from you. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course, your favorite podcast app.
We're back. Thanks again to Jess and Bruce for joining us. Just awesome dudes. I love chatting with them all the time. I've been on Jess's podcast, The Rink Live, and I've been on with Bruce. Alexis, you have got some bad luck with Bruce, huh?
Yeah, Bruce and I, we were going to talk about it during the interview, but we were just so, we were in the lane.
Got too much to say.
Hockey.
You can't cut
we didn't talk about it. But back in March of 2020, Bruce and I recorded a segment to air on his radio show ahead of the Whitecaps playing in the Isabel Cup final, which was scheduled to be on March 13th of 2020, which is when shit really hit the fan for the world and sports. And so we recorded it the day before. It was my first time, getting introduced to him, because you kind of introduced me to him, Jesse, and it was awesome. We had a great segment lined up, and next thing I know, the world gets shut down, no hockey game. So the segment never aired. This time around, he's like, all right, Whitecaps are playing, in the bubble. Let's do another segment. This time, hopefully it'll air. So we recorded a segment in the morning, and it was going out later that afternoon. Well, it was the day that the bubble got burst for the NWHL. We recorded the segment. I took a nap, and I wake up to an email from the league saying that the NWHL was postponing the season. Bruce is like, looks like our segment is null. And so I was just like, wow, we're 0 for 2 here on getting a relevant.
So it's Bruce's fault. Sorry, Bruce.
Bad luck.
I think it's your bad. I think you're bad luck. You're good luck for UMD. Bad luck for the NWHL. Well, no, thank you, you guys. I'm sure most of you already follow them, because they are some of the most insightful college hockey minds I've ever met, as exemplified in our segment. Yeah, exactly. So shout out to them. Before we wrap up this week's episode, another college hockey.
Have you
up
had
for
enough?
Debate. Yes, you can't get enough. We're almost done with it anyway. Sorry, guys. But this week's up for debate. Alexis, you went with who will be the last Minnesota team standing. Whether that means they are necessarily the champs or not, up for debate, up for open to opinions. But SCSU, UMD, Minnesota State, Mankato, heading to the Frozen Four here. Alexis, who do you think will be the last team standing? I saw a lot of love for SCSU.
Yes. And a lot of love for UMD. A lot of people being mean to us because we don't like UMD. There was a lot going on in our mentions on Twitter that day. But it was a great conversation on Twitter. Nice to see people chiming in on their college hockey thoughts, because this is such a special year with 3 Minnesota teams playing in the Frozen Four. One of them for sure is going to be playing in the final, and whether there's a second one is still to be determined. But I was rooting for the Gophers and Huskies. Gophers didn't want me to be happy, apparently, so they're out. So I have to made my bet. I got to line it. I got to root for the Huskies for better or for worse. And I truly do think that they have a chance to win the entire tournament, to win a championship, just because we talked about it with Jess and Bruce, but the Huskies seem like on another level this year. Brett Larson has done a fantastic job with the organization. They played so well in the NCAA tournament. And it's only their second ever time to the Frozen Four. So this is a school that has had great regular seasons historically, but have always struggled come playoffs. They're like the Minnesota Wild of college hockey, Division I college men's hockey. So, Air Force Academy, Husky fans never forget that one. That was a terrible time in our lives. But yeah, they always
want to talk about terrible times. Holy cross. I'm still not over it, Gopher fans either, so don't worry. But yes, continue.
Well, Gopher fans can relate. But yeah, the Huskies just have had great regular seasons. They won the Penrose Cup when I was in college, and just have struggled in playoffs. So I'm excited to see them in the Frozen Four. I think they've got a chance. And like Jess had said, kind of rallying around the Brodzinski injury and just saying, hey, we had a great tournament. We've made it this far. Let's win this one for one of the guys who is so valuable to this team. So I got to go with the Huskies, but I would be happy to see any of the Minnesota teams end up winning the championship. What about you, Jesse?
I mean, yeah, we talked about it at depth in our last segment, so I don't want to harp on too much more, but I would say SCSU for sure. And I was actually kind of surprised at the amount. I don't know if it's because Bulldog fans have stopped following us because of my perceived hatred
That's probably
for their school. But I thought I'd see a lot more Duluth vocalization for people doing that. And actually there was a lot of Minnesota State love too, which is awesome. I always like new blood. I think it's always really good for our new program to step in there. No discredit UMD. It is fun to see repeat after repeat, but once in a, you get sick of it. I want to see a new face in there. I want to see a new banner. I want to see a new team take it to the next level and start to really up their game. So I'm going to say SCSU, but I will be happy with any Minnesota school at this point in time, even though I'm a Gopher fan. I'm a Minnesota fan, as we all know. So let's have a good tournament. Hopefully it's not UMass. Anybody but UMass.
Yeah, please. Anybody but UMass.
Thanks again to Jess and Bruce for being our guests. Thank you very much to SotaStick.com. Don't forget that you can get free shipping by using Bardown Beauties at checkout on all purchases at SotaStick.com. Don't forget to use code BEAUTS for free $10 with BettorEdge. And thank you to Talk North as well for featuring us on their lovely network. Be sure you check out all the other podcasts that they have to offer, including Worst Seats in the House, and they've got Gopher football, a whole bunch. So be sure you're also giving them some love and likes. Be sure you're subscribing to our YouTube channel and giving us all the love and likes too. Shout out to John Williams, who won our first giveaway based on YouTube subscriptions, a $50 SotaStick gift card. We will be doing another one of those this month. Stay tuned to hear more details on that. Alexis, Fred, thank you. Thank you for letting me kick the podcast off with my Cam Talbot podium. I'm glad I could surprise you.
I can't believe you sprung that at us, but we made it through this whole episode.
I got to keep you guys on your toes once in a while. As you'll see in Cues with the Beauties, we probably got more good stuff cooking. So be sure to check out YouTube for Cues with the Beauties. That'll do it for this week. Have a good one, guys. Near.